Hello and welcome to week 31's gameplay episode. I have with me some gameplay expertise, including JoshXLS. Hello.
Yes, thanks for having me here, Ben. Much kinder introduction than the supporter episode last week, so I'll take it.
Yeah. And we also have Richard Buckley, World Cup and FC Pro commentator, of course. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ben. Yeah, it's always great to be back on the podcast and looking forward to talking all things gameplay.
Indeed. And we have returning to the podcast after a bit, man of the people, Springford. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. Always a pleasure to be on, and looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Yeah, let's get going. We're going to start off with a starter question that is just perfectly built for Richard Buckley, so we should get it in there as soon as we can. And the question is from Planet Sam via YouTube comments, and he says, I've noticed lately if I'm 1 or 2 up in the last 10 minutes, people pause, change something, and then absolutely slaughter my defense with a press and make passing out impossible. And I've given draws away from great positions where I should win. The question is, what are they changing to, and how can I counter it? I'm a consistent 9-win player in champs. Before we hear from Buckley, what do you think, Josh, that they are changing to have such a, game-changing effect?
Essentially, I think there could be 2 things that they're changing. The main one for me, though, is I think a lot of people set their defensive line to high, so like the 70 depth, and then press it up to 95 if they are chasing the game or if they feel like they need more pressure on. And that does make a massive difference in terms of that feeling of being like choked defensively by the pressure that's being put on. I think also some people may change their roles or even their formation to be a bit more aggressive further up the pitch, changing some of their focuses to be more attack-minded, which just essentially means that their players won't run back as quickly in transition. It will mean they'll stay higher up the pitch, which, will put that pressure on. I also think there's probably 25% of it now is in your own head. Especially if it's happened a couple of times, then, if that pause goes in or if there's a break in play and you've got that 10 minutes to go, there's probably an element of you that is panicking and being like, oh, they're putting loads of pressure on, and actually it's not changed. It's just because you've had those experiences. So you start making poorer decisions and you're not getting out quite as easily. One of the big things I'd say is when people are putting that high press on, that R1 square can be massive for just launch it up the pitch, like especially if you've got somebody who can win a ball in the air or take something down in the air. They'll win it more often than they won't. Something to do with the manual nature of the pass just means that they kind of get favored to win the header, and it can really just like relieve some of that pressure if you feel like you're being pressed around the back. But I am not the expert here at holding the ball in the last 20 minutes, and so I feel like we should hear from the resident expert.
Over to you, Springford.
One thing I'd add just quickly, actually, is one thing they could be doing is when you mentioned the changing the formation, if they're changing their formation to match your formation, then those players will be matched a lot more when they're pressing. So it's going to be man for man. Sometimes to the point, if I'm looking for a tactical change and I note, and one of my safe formations is one that they're already playing, I won't switch to that. I'll go to something else, because if you're going man to man, you're really taking away any sort of tactical advantage your formation could have in terms of spacing. So I'd keep an eye if they are switching formation, what it's into. And then if you wanted to try and sort of combat any changes they were going to make, then you could have like a defensive formation ready to go with some defensive roles on it, and probably not too low on the depth because I think you're inviting pressure on, but I think you could probably counteract some of the changes they're making by keeping an eye on it.
It's a really good point. If you're playing a 4 at the back and they play something with 4 across the front, that can make it a lot harder for people to work the ball out or feel comfortable on the ball if the opponent is pressing. I would also add as well, I've noticed if you switch, say, an advanced forward to advanced forward support, they really will help a lot more in the press. And so they may be doing that. And I guess that's something to note if you're trying to win the ball back yourself.
Even just subbing players as well. I think a lot of people don't actually make substitutes, and especially don't make defensive ones. If people are bringing on attacking players, they're going to be full stamina. A lot of them have got quick step plus, so they don't really need the chemistry boost to pace, so they'll be quick when they come on. And if you're not looking to switch fullbacks if they're low on stamina, then you are going to be caught out more easily, especially defensive midfielders as well. If you're looking to get interceptions and things like that, that's going to be impacted by stamina, how quickly they can get up to players and get up to the ball.
Yeah, I think we've warmed things up for Richard Buckley to come in and tell us exactly what we should be doing in those last 10 minutes after the opponent pauses.
I think there's a few things. One, I think Josh sort of hit the nail on the head. You're probably overthinking it. When you're getting pressed, you're spamming X, you're trying to pass into spaces that aren't necessarily there if you weren't in the position you're in. I always say to people, just don't be afraid to scum it if you really want to win. I'm chipping the ball up to a centre-back and heading it back to the goalie to relieve the pressure, and then I'm going long. I'm going to the corner flag. Like I'm quite literally doing everything I can to also annoy rather than just hold the ball. Like, if you flip it around and you're the person chasing that game, the most annoying thing that you find is not when you are pressing and you're actually winning the ball. It's when your opponent is holding it in the corner and you can't get near him, and then you'll foul him, or if he chips it to a centre-back and heads it back to the goalkeeper, like, your head's on Mars. You've just got to imagine that that's what you're doing to your opponent. Like, it's not pretty, but if you are wanting to, you said you're a 9-win player consistently, you could probably, if you want to get to 10 or 11, like, you have to sort of start playing. Sometimes, if you're not naturally unbelievable and at the game, you have to take your advantages and just do what you need to do to get the win at the end of the day. I think when you are in the final third, it's better to try and keep the ball in the opponent's half rather than in your half. And one big tip, unless you are going back to the goalkeeper's hands, don't go back to the goalkeeper's feet until you see probably 90 plus and you're in injury time, because that's the most dangerous position. The goalkeeper, sometimes if you're doing a full manual R1 square, it takes a few seconds to power it up. It can bounce off players. If you're just clearing it long, you won't clear it as far as you want to clear it. So last resort, I would say go all the way back to the goalkeeper with the ball on the floor.
Yeah. Any further advice from less expert, but I'm sure they know their stuff, Josh and Springford?
I just think that there is a stigma around holding the ball, but realistically, like Richard has said, if you really want that win, just do it from the 80th minute. If it's a tough game, do it from the 75th. You don't have to hold the ball, but you can really slow down the play while you've got the ball. They can't score, and also, if it's a problem getting over the mentality thing, just think if it was in the reverse situation, your opponent probably absolutely would do it to you if you were losing and chasing the game. So, so sometimes you have got to be a bit ruthless if you want to take that next step up. And if you've worked hard for 80 minutes of in-game time to get that lead, why shouldn't you hold on to the ball for the last 10 minutes to see it through? So I think, if it's a mental thing in terms of why you're not doing that, then, just do it.
Yeah, I think for me, I tend not to hold the ball around the back, mainly because I find, especially against a 4-2-1-3, the easiest place to hold the ball is in midfield because they tend to be sat so deep with the 4. They've got 2 DMs. The cam tends to be a shadow striker and so is sat further up the pitch. And especially because I play with one fullback on wing back, I end up with 5 midfielders because I play the 4-1-2-1-2. I end up with 5 players across the midfield. If I want to hold the ball 40 yards out from their goal, they cannot get the ball off me. And if they try too hard, I can just walk through them because I have enough players then going forward that I can just start passing it around them and create a really good chance. So, for me, I would try and not think about holding the ball around the back line where you might be inviting that pressure. I try and hold it a bit further up where it's not about holding the ball, it's frustrating your opponent. If you make them frustrated, then they're not going to track a 1-2 in the same way. They're not going to track that run from your striker in the same way. It's about like trying to come up with ways to like win in the kind of mental battle between you. And if you feel under pressure, they're winning. If you're holding the ball, they're going to be frustrated, and that means you're winning in that moment. So yeah, I think holding the ball higher at the pitch feels a lot better as well, because if you lose it, it's like, okay, I've got the full length of the pitch to kind of now get myself into a better defensive shape, rather than if you're passing it around the back and, you know, miss a pass, or like you do a like lofted ball across the back line and it sends it to the moon when you try and do that. And so by the time it comes down, you're now battling for a header. And I think in those situations when you lose the ball, it then can be really panicky. Whereas if you're losing it on the edge of your opponent's box rather than your own, you've got a long time to kind of get back in shape, to pull them down, to take that yellow card, take a red card if you need to, rather than it being like there's nothing you could do about it.
I think actually your point about holding it in the midfield against the 4-2-1-3 is actually a good general point about playing against the 4-2-1-3, I think, because especially if you have the ball at fullback and you're coming forward, it requires them to move their wide player, their winger, back manually to help out. And often you'll notice, actually, if they stop controlling that player, they won't really engage. So you can often end up in a situation where you, especially depending on what formation you play, have sort of 3 players in a space where they've kind of just got their fullback, and then they'll maybe then move their defensive midfielder across to try and help out, and that just opens up the space in the middle. It feels a little odd. I mean, there are many odd things about playing the 4-2-1-3. We talked about it last week on the spoti.fi episode. But yeah, one of the things, having that space in midfield is definitely something that is quite interesting. And yeah, I think generally, just really good points in terms of seeing the game out. Although, you got to watch out for something you saw, Buckley, in the pro scene, right? That is quite unlikely to happen. I've never seen that before. But what, the guy put it out of play twice after the time had elapsed for the game, and yet it carried on playing.
Yeah, the ref just didn't fancy it. He had both teams to score over 6.5 goals on his 𝗏𝗏, so he had to let him keep playing. But yeah, typically, as soon as you see that injury time, get it out of play, and as long as it's you only as well. This year, which was different, the ref will usually only allow one corner. If you like one attacking corner past the time, so if it goes out of play for a corner, your goalkeeper pulls off a save, he'll allow that one corner, and then the next corner, typically he'll just blow full time.
I feel like it's a little contextual depending on how many goals you are ahead, I want to say as well. Like if you're more goals ahead, it won't give the corner sometimes. One thing I was actually going to add, I do think it's really probably the only time I use the precision lobbed pass is at the end of games. I guess I sometimes use it earlier, but it is quite a useful thing to learn for putting the ball out of play. And that is, you hold R1 and then hold the square or X button, the lob pass button. And it is good for launching the ball down the pitch if the time isn't about to elapse and you're kind of panicking, but it's really good for putting the ball out of play so that the final whistle will go. So something that people could potentially add to their game. Right, I think that's probably enough Buckley ball chat. Let's move on to this question from a listener, which is, quite interesting. And actually, we'll do that after the break. Hello, welcome back after the break. So we had an email in, which I think could create some interesting discussion. He says, I'm an ordinary 13-year-old kid from Denmark. I'd really love some advice. As you can see, my name is Screen Time to Glory, and that is simply because I have very strict rules for my screen time. I play FIFA as much as I can and I really enjoy it, but my problem is I'm stuck in 6th division. And one of my main problems is I have a hard time defending and a hard time converting my chances to goals. So if you guys would give me some advice, I would really appreciate it very much. And thank you for reading my question. So I thought this was interesting because actually there are a lot of people out there, whether lacking in screen time or just don't have time to consume, say, tutorial videos, things like that are around this kind of level, who could probably benefit from some quite kind of straightforward, I guess, or or advice about things that maybe would seem more obvious to us, but could actually really be relatively game changing quite quickly. The first thing I wanted to dig into is the point about converting chances into goals. Now, I'm going to assume that means that chances are being generated but not finished. And so I guess I was thinking, Josh, we can't rule out that this isn't because of player choice, not specifically technique.
Yeah, it could absolutely be personnel. I think the biggest thing is really about like getting a finishing style. And sometimes that requires you to have players with play style specifically that suit your finishing style. So, if you're someone who likes to finesse in the box, then you need that finesse shot plus. If you're someone who likes like a low driven, if you've not been trying the low drivens, then you're going to want that as a play style plus. So absolutely, like player choice can be a factor. Chemistry style choice as well could also be a factor. You want to make sure you're maxing everything out with keepers getting better and better. You want to make sure that you've got that stat advantage as much as possible by having like, you really kind of want 99 in your finishing and shot power stats if you can right now. To be honest, I think finishing is a lot about practice, and that is difficult when you've got limited screen time. I think it's probably quite a common problem with people who can't play a lot, because when you play a lot, you learn like how the keeper moves. You learn, okay, well, if I'm running at this angle, actually the keeper tends to overcommit to one side, and so I can just kind of roll it into the opposite corner and they struggle to get there. Or this is the right angle for a finesse shot because I've hit 300 finesse shots from here, and I know if my body's facing this way or if the ball's this way, or like that. It is a lot more difficult when you don't have as much time. I kind of shout out to last week's gameplay pod where we talked about using the arena and just setting yourself up in the same position over and over again. If you have a chance that you feel like you keep missing, you can just set that up as a scenario and play it over and over and over again in the arena until you feel comfortable with how you're finishing the shot. It's a kind of meme at this point, but playing against squad battles, like you really can learn how to finish playing against squad battles, because as you say, if it's creating the chances is fine and you can't put them away, well, actually it's very little that your opponent's doing. Division 6, you don't get a lot of keeper movements. So, it's more just you versus the game at that point.
Very good point, yeah.
The shout out for squad battles and the arena is a great one, being able to set up those scenarios to consistently hit those shots, because I think if your screen time is limited and it is solely the finishing of these chances, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with using your screen time for that day to just go in and practice these shots. Like I've played a lot of squad battles this year, mostly for Evos or, just early days when you're trying to get rewards. And it's such a good way to learn how to finish, where you can take the sort of chances from, what angles you can hit a finesse from. Not so much for chance creation, because if it was chance creation, obviously the computer plays differently to a human player. But in terms of being able to hit those chances consistently, and maybe, if you're really dedicated to improving, a shout out for precision shooting as well, if you're not using that, because then that will become about your aim. It will become you'll hit chances that maybe you wouldn't be able to hit if you weren't using it. And then you can really, if you turn on the controller in the top right hand corner of the screen as well, you can see where you're aiming. If you were to watch the clips back and stuff, so you can really start to hone in on the reason why these chances aren't going in, if it's due down to finishing.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Richard? Anything you'd particularly recommend in terms of things that have improved your chance conversion this cycle?
Not necessarily my chance conversion, just more getting better at the game. Seems a long time ago, since I was 13, but I would always want to be playing with other people, no matter what game I'm playing. So if you've got friends that are playing, someone else that is playing FC with you, get on co-op rivals with them, play together. If you've got a few of you, jump on pro clubs, because it seems less ultimate team focused and more just the game in general. So I would say try and play with other people, because there'll be things that, or even just play against someone else that play it, like we used to play sort of a lot of friendlies back in FIFA 12, FIFA 13, and I used to improve a lot doing that because you, especially when it's sort of friendly competition as well, you wanting to win, but it's less serious. So I would say that if you've got people to play with, engage that time, and you also have a much more fun experience than playing on your own.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point as well. Maybe you can get a little extra screen time by saying it's playing with friends as well, you know. Anything anyone wants to add in before we move on from sort of attacking side, I guess?
I think because we've spoken about finishing and assumed that it is just the actual finishing of chances rather than the creation. But then I think if it is anything to do with creation, and it could be, you know, what quality of chances are you creating? He could be saying that, you know, actually this is a good chance when realistically it might not be, because, you know, a real life chance is very different to the type of chances you want to get in game. I think make chance creation easy for yourself in terms of how you're setting your tactic up. I think especially at maybe like lower divisions, people don't cope well with runners. If you can set up a tactic that has inside forwards on attack, shadow strikers, advanced forwards running in behind, then that's where people are going to struggle a lot. You want to make the game sort of play for you as much as you can in chance creation, unless you are able to play a lock, set off runs or things like that. So maybe just take a look at the tactic, have a look at what kind of chances do you want to create? Do you want to create cutbacks? If so, make sure that you have wide players that are running in behind. Do you want to be able to create maybe like one-on-one chances? If so, have a centre attacking mid and a striker that are able to play through balls into each other. So maybe just take a look at what sort of chance you're best at creating, best at scoring at, and see if you can supplement that into your game and your tactic.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's move on to the sort of defensive side of things. And he's saying, I have a hard time defending. Obviously, that's quite broad. Is there a particular thing that maybe you've seen, Josh, when playing against players who aren't so good, I guess it's not quite on your level, that you think, oh, if this person did this, actually, they would be able to defend me much better?
I mean, it's not grabbing. We say it all the time. Don't grab centre backs. Like, you just don't grab your defenders and try to defend with them. The more that you mess with your shape in the back line, the more spaces you leave for people's attacking AI to make the runs. Like, it's the biggest mistake people make is being too trigger happy with their defenders. Second man pressing all the time as well. You don't want to do that. Sprinting. I often find just sprinting when you're trying to defend it, because you then have to try and slow your player's momentum to change direction. It's far easier to throw somebody off if they're sprinting than if they're just jockeying or kind of like jogging alongside you. They're able to change. I think a lot of defending is about being patient. And again, in Division 6, you don't have to worry as much about long-range finesse shots, about the Travellas from distance. So it is more about kind of being difficult to break down, you know, if defending is something you struggle with. What I would say is everyone struggles with defending. The way the game is currently, it is difficult to defend. And so you are going to concede goals. It's just a lot easier to concede goals when you feel like you're scoring them. And I actually think that if you fix the scoring your chances aspect, you'll feel less pressure around the conceding. Like, so I play on multiple different accounts, so they're in different divisions. Like, even against players I would say are bad, like really bad players, I will often concede 1 or 2 goals if they don't rage quit during a game, because my concentration will drift, because they'll get a lucky bounce of the ball, because they'll get a counter where their players just threw and I can't get back in time, or whatever it is. It is a difficult game to keep a clean sheet in. And so, you know, the more goals you score, the more kickoffs you give to your opponent. That's a great opportunity for them to score. So I actually wouldn't worry too much about your defending. Now, if it's a case that you're conceding 5 or 6 goals every game, yeah, absolutely, that is then the priority to work on. But I often find that if you're more potent in attack, actually it helps you defensively anyway, because you defend with a lead and you can be a bit more calm when you're defending. Whereas, you know, if every game's tight and you know that you need to create 3 good chances to score a goal, well, then you're more conscious about getting the ball back quicker and you start pressing a bit more and you start leaving those gaps that people can then exploit. So, yeah, there's something that, like, maybe a little bit more general that I'd like to kind of bring up as well, which is, like, tactically. I don't know what tactics this kind of emailer's using, but one of the things that I see, in fact, do you know what? Gary Neville's rant last weekend after the Manchester derby made me think about it, where he talks about the fact that football was boring because everything was a pale imitation of Pep Guardiola, and no one can actually play the football that his best sides could play because they don't have the quality of players. And I feel like there is a similar issue right now in the game with pro players and pro tactics, where people are taking those tactics and those play styles and trying to implement it themselves. And you aren't good enough to do it. You aren't good enough to not care about role plus pluses because you aren't player locking perfectly. You aren't sending people on the right runs. You don't know how the game works at a level required to be able to do that. And so I think there's a really important point in all of this, which is find the play style that works for you. Make something that elevates what you're good at, rather than going, well, they're saying this is overpowered because pros can't defend, you know, Travellas from 30 yards out. Well, no, they can't, but you're not playing against pros. You're not a pro. So it's irrelevant for you because you're not going to get up there. Like, this is about you being able to progress from Div 6 to Div 5 to Div 4 to Div 3. And that is just going to be getting the fundamentals right, getting the things that you're good at and accentuating them, and then trying to help yourself on the defensive side and a lot of that is by letting the computer position your players for you because they often do it better than we do.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that actually, if you can find a way of playing that is unique, you're going to beat a lot of people because they're not going to be used to playing against that, right? Like, there is a type of player that I come up against all the time that is very counter heavy. As soon as I go into the game within 10 in-game minutes, I know exactly how they're going to play, and it makes it a lot easier to defend them. And if you find your own kind of style, slightly different style, that can give you an advantage. And also, you're going to enjoy it more because it's enhancing how probably you want to play and enjoy playing. So obviously the most important thing, although getting better is important, is that you're enjoying playing this game because it is a game. So I think it's important to highlight both those things. And actually interesting, we discussed maybe a couple of weeks ago, Richard, that you're a very strong player. You played against Talando, who's on the podcast, who plays a very unique play style. It's very patient, very pass pattern heavy, and that was a real challenge for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very similar to what Josh was saying, having playing the game how you feel you play the game the best, you will improve and you will get better. And just echoing sort of what was said there. And
then at Springfield, in terms of the more broad question, was there anything that you wanted to add?
It might be slightly controversial, but I think it's. I completely agree with what Josh said about don't start randomly pulling defenders out of your back line. That's good advice. But something that I see whenever I go into an open matchmaking mode, so I'm not playing people at my level, is an absolute refusal to stop to control anyone else while defending other than the CDM. And my eyes light up when I play someone like this because it's so easy to hold the ball, pass it around them, get runners in behind because no one's tracking the runs. And I feel like it's advice that gets given to players at a certain level, only defend with your CDMs, only put pressure on your CDMs, which I think works, again, up to a certain level. But you won't see anyone in Division 2, 1 above making consistent progress into Elite who are only controlled in their centre defensive mids. Yes, up to a certain point, but when it gets into that box and into the final third, you need to be able to put pressure on with your centre backs to be able to close down. And if you're only ever controlling your CDMs, especially if you're playing someone who's very quick and able to pass the ball around, they'll have the ball in your box before you know it if you're only controlling your CDMs. So I think if you're dedicated to improving at the game and getting better in all phases, yes, focus on being able to jockey and move your CDMs around, but don't only stick to controlling them defensively. I think also with defending, it's important to recognise when it's time to defend, to go out and get the ball and to take the ball off the opponent, and when it's time just to defend the space. I'm sure it's something that Japes has said before as well, but back on an older podcast. But it's really important to defend that space that the ball is in, rather than also putting people out trying to get the ball. A lot of defending is just delaying people until they make a mistake. Especially, this is what I say, if people are getting caught on the counter all the time, just delay the attack. You don't need to get the ball off of them. You just need to make them slow down the sprint, slow down the passing, move people into positions that aren't going to intercept the ball, but are going to make them reconsider about just driving forward. And I think, and also just echoing that defending is really hard in this game. There's not going to be games that you don't concede, rarely. So you can either focus on trying to outscore them, or trying to, just make sure that you can be as solid as you are defensively. But as, Richard mentioned earlier in that clip, that there's always going to be chances that go against you, bounce backs, things like that. So if you can get a real solid foundation of knowing when to come out to take the ball, when to lock off the space, but also being able to knowing when to control each player at each phase of the play. And you can do that through just LB switching. It doesn't have to be right stick switching if you're not ready for that. Just keep LB switching until you get the player that you need to. It's usually going to be the player that's closest to the ball anyway, as long as it's working. So you can put pressure on that way. But yeah, just for like the midfield phase, control your CDMs. But when it is in that final third, just be able to put a little bit of pressure on with your defending players, because that's what they're there to do.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think also there's an element of what I'm saying in terms of like, don't mess with your back line is not necessarily don't control them. It's more don't run out with a centre back to go and close somebody down. Like you're much better off, in my eyes, second man pressing with the DM that's closer and controlling a centre back to track a run. That's like the next level of like what control that you've got. You just don't want to mess with your defensive shape is more what I'd say, rather than that you don't want to ever control them. I do think there's definitely an important distinction to be made between those two things. And you are right to point that out.
Agreed, 100% agreed. I think you're completely right on that. And wasn't thinking you were saying that only ever control the CDMs, but I have seen that as advice. Posted out before. 100% I've seen and I think it works up until a certain level, but again, if you really want to improve, and that's a really good tip, because that is mostly what I do in terms of second man press, so that the player closest to the ball gets it, and then you're LT jockeying with a centre back, just sort of holding the line yourself, but also watching for any runners as they come through.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, that tracking runners thing, because I think that is the most obvious thing I see when I'm playing someone who's not at the same level, is that they're not willing to track runners, and that makes playing through balls to your forwards really quite easy. And if you can, what you want to be doing is holding R1/RB to do the second man press, and as Springford said, hold that defensive line, but be ready, very ready to chase an attacker as they get put through on goal, if they do manage to get past your second man press player, because that is such a common way of being scored on, especially because there is this big discrepancy, which is maybe closing a little bit, a few more quick set plus defenders and things, between the attacking players that you're playing and your defenders, particularly centre backs. And the other thing I was going to add is something since the playstyle era started that I've been much more aware of, is actually the player I'm controlling defensively. What do they have in their arsenal defensively in terms of playstyles that's going to help me in this situation? For example, if I've got a defender with intercept plus, I will be more willing to sit off the player and not go in for a tackle, and just, pause, cover those passing lanes, try and force the pass and then intercept it. Whereas if I've got a player with anticipate plus, I'm going to be much more willing to go straight in and be aggressive, because you always need to kind of weigh up what your player is capable of doing in that situation. It's one of the reasons why I personally don't really tend to change my defenders that much, because it's not like I'm like, oh, this is really exciting playing with a new defender particularly. But I do find that having a consistent defensive shape makes quite a big difference in terms of your familiarity with it. And I think that can can really help out. On that, actually, I think we should take a quick break, and we'll be back just after this. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, well, hopefully for our question asker via email, send questions in via email, footweekly@mail.com. That was a helpful answer. Feel free to follow up if there are any further questions. And actually on the defensive side, there was something, well, I guess it relates to attacking as well. There was something I wanted to mention because before the pod, we were talking about what tactics we were playing. Quite a few of us playing the 4-2-3-1 brackets too. And I've been a big fan of having a deep line playmaker defend and a deep line playmaker build up. I know Buckley was playing, was it a banana tactic, right? With 2 deep line playmaker build ups?
It was, yes, it was.
Yeah. And then Springford, you were saying you actually go for the deep line playmaker roaming.
Yeah, I used so both of them, both CDMs on deep lane playmaker roaming. I just feel like it works for me in the context of the tactic that I'm using. I feel like on roaming, they kind of take aspects from all the other ones, which is a bit strange because roaming was around before build up, but I feel like they kind of fuse all of the aspects. And I don't know if it's because we're later in the game and players are better, the stats are better, but they seem quite intelligent at knowing when to go and when not to go and what spaces to fill. I like to play, so I bought that the fantasy 𝘭𝘪𝘬𝘦, and I really want to just have like a wing back that's going forward. For a while I was using fullbacks, but I just really need width. So I've got him on wing back, and I feel like it works really well with the deep line playmaker roaming because they almost fill that like wide half gap where he goes up, the inside forward moves in, and then the deep line playmaker roaming is dominating that gap in behind. And then the other deep line playmaker knows to push up slightly, but not too far that I feel like with build up, sometimes they make runs beyond the strikers, which you want sometimes, but they do it without you initiating it. Whereas with the roaming, they're almost in that position ready to do it, but they won't make the run unless you make the L1 trigger or you do 1-2 pass. And I don't feel like it sort of catches me out defensively having them. They're very clever at if an inside forward moves in, then sometimes they'll fill the space and run beyond onto the wing. And it just makes it quite unpredictable for opponents as well. I mean, sometimes it's unpredictable for me. I don't know where they're going to turn up, but it means that I'm creating different styles of chances and being able to sort of surprise the opponent while also being quite fluid and still defensively solid in that 2DM shape. You get more out of them when there are spaces to fill. If you were using like 2 fullbacks, maybe like 2 wingers that are very like almost running on shuttles up and down, I don't think they'd be as good. But when you've got, so I have a shadow striker, so that space is being vacated by runs. The inside forward space is being vacated by runs. The wing back space, it really allows them to move around the pitch. So I think if you wanted to try it, make sure you've got people moving around them so that they can also occupy that space as well.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. And Josh, you play that 4-1-2-1-2 narrow. You're playing a deep line playmaker as well. I'm guessing defend, right? Because it's too exposing to have them on roaming. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want them to not get involved in the build up. I do want them to be there, but it is very much because I have one of my fullbacks on wing back. I need that kind of fourth player that I can pull back into that defensive line to kind of help out if necessary. So it's also helped in terms of with evolutions, because I mainly use an evolution squad, just focusing on like defensive stats for that position. It's really helped kind of like nail down like the things that I want out of my defender. So quick, can pass, can defend, but I don't really need much outside of that. I've even kind of like, they're not especially strong, and I don't feel like I lose out too much with that, because it's more about them being, I kind of like want that kind of Kante vibe a little bit. I need them to kind of be everywhere, which is also why I like deep line playmaker more than holding. I feel like holding is almost like classic 10, but for DM, they just kind of sit in the middle, whereas with deep line playmaker, they just are a little bit more, they more run around a little more readily without you having to tell them to do it, even though like on the heat map, it doesn't really show like that.
Yeah, I've actually found holding ball winning is a bit better for that. Like you get a bit more
maybe I need to give that a try.
Defensive aggression and mobility, because yeah, I agree, like holding defend is really static in a way that I don't think helps. Any kind of tactical revelations for you recently, Buckley? Or
I will say regarding the 4-2-3-1 brackets 2, sometimes I do feel as though I'm having to work harder to create chances.
Oh yeah.
And in previous years of the game, especially the 4-3-2-1 and even the 4-2-3-1, like going back a fair few years, it felt really simple just to go, I know exactly what I'm going to do. Bang, 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 goal. Whereas I have to, if I'm going to jump on and play in that 4-2-3-1 with the left mid and right mid, I really have to be locked in to get the best out of it. And I have to concentrate quite a lot, it feels like, to get the best out of the formation. But I do feel as though if I am playing well, it's the best way for me to play. But if I don't play well, and I know I'm not playing well, it can go badly quite quickly. That's the only thing with that formation. Like it does feel like I really have to be switched on.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It feels a lot more satisfying to play than something like the 4-2-1-3, because you're required to do a bit more, I think, to create chances, and it gives you more complexity in attack, which is nice.
I think something to keep an eye on for that is because we're getting to the point of the game now where we're getting these like 90 plus pace CAMs, is the 4-2-3-1 narrow. So if you can get Shadow Striker plus on the roll, 4-2-3-1 narrow, and then you could have 2 Shadow Strikers, LAM, RAM, or you could even have 3, one in the middle. That I think that will play a lot like the old 4-2-3-1s in previous years. And it was good at the start of the game because defenders were quite slow paced, so you could get away with it. But I think it could make a real sort of resurgence as you're getting players that are able to play through the middle, but also with high pace, so you can put Hunter on them, they're always max pace, and then look out for the Shadow Striker pluses, because I think you get some really fluid movement out of that. Because sometimes they'll stick wide and they'll run wide, other times they'll cut in, other times they'll fill the gap that the other Shadow Strikers make. So yeah, it's just something I'll be keeping an eye on as we move into Team of the Season, and just what CAM start coming out with hopefully the right roles.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think things will change a bit over Team of the Season. Let's move on to you, Richard, because I know you were saying you wanted to chat a bit about the low driven.
Yeah, I mean, it feels about a month since it was introduced in, and this weekend was the first weekend where I conceded probably more low drivens than any other shot. It probably is due to the fact that there's more items having the low driven plus, or even just low driven silver. And I can't lie, it's really, really annoying because I feel as though I defend it perfectly and it just flies past me, or the goalkeeper just fumbles it every single time. And it was really starting to just sort of like just grind me down, especially as we're playing over the weekend, playing champs. It feels like I defend it perfectly and it still just zips past me. Like Harry Kane the Dream Chaser scored a lot of goals past me across the weekend. And I do worry that, especially as we go into Team of the Season, it's going to be a playstyle that gets given to, I would imagine, nearly all the attackers because they want more items to have it. And I worry that it's going to be a bit of a problem.
Do you think, if we're being harsh though, Josh, he needs to get good and just defend the driven as well as the other shot types he's used to defending?
Yeah, I do. Because I actually think that the low driven hype is overblown, personally. It's better than what I was doing before, and this may be a precision thing.
I do think it's a bit of a precision thing. A lot more people are taking low drivens against me than they were before.
Yeah, but I don't think that makes it more effective. I think it's just that it's been made more obvious to people that is a way that you can shoot. And so they've started trying it, they're finding they're scoring it, and I'm conceding goals to players without low driven as a play style because it's a good way to score a goal, and it has been for the entire game cycle, and people just haven't done it. So I think right now, as with anything, when it's new and when people are saying it's overpowered, that's what everyone's trying at the moment. We'll get something new will come out in a week's time, and then someone will say, try this is overpowered, and then that's all you'll ever concede. I'm waiting for some like aerial power header beast of a striker, and it's like, whipped pass into them, hold L2. I can't tell people enough, hold L2 when you're crossing, and it's like crossing in old games. I don't know. I get it. It's strong. It's a good way to finish, as it is in real life, but it has been for the whole game cycle. I just think that it's a different way for people to finish. I think maybe keeper choices haven't quite caught up with it yet. Saves with feet trait is pretty big. Deflect is pretty big as well. I don't know. I don't know that we've had it for long enough to know if it's an issue yet. And I'll be interested to see as all of the leagues finish in the pro events over the next few weeks, if it's something that really like infests those and that's how everyone's scoring there. If that's the case, then maybe I'm wrong. But right now I think maybe it's slightly overblown.
To be fair, I do think saves with feet makes quite a big difference, especially if you have rush out. If you can put quick pressure on a player who's going to be trying to low driven it, I think that helps hugely. If the goalkeeper's on the line and they take a low driven, it's a goal. So yeah, I think that's important to know. Actually, Richard, have you seen it much at the pro level then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in San Sebastian just last weekend for the FC Pro La Liga Cup, and Lewandowski, the Dream Chaser, was picked quite heavily, and he has it and scoring a lot.
Yeah, the thing is, I think Finesse Plus is still way more overpowered than low driven, and I think it is just because people are less used to defending low driven shots, less used to covering the angles which they've been defending for years, right? Because finesse is always quite strong, and I think it's especially strong this cycle, so people are very used to it, and often defending the finesse can open up the angle for the low driven. So I think it is probably mainly that, and a lot more people are doing it now. But Springford, we haven't heard from you on this, so yeah, what are your thoughts on low driven? And you're using precision, right?
Yeah, no, I do play with precision. I turned it on since the 𝗵𝘃𝘀𝘁 last year. Didn't think I'd need to add it into my game, but actually it's been really good. Again, I think you can score shots that wouldn't really go in. Sometimes it glitches out the keeper a little bit. And I kind of agree with Josh, because if you were using precision before this, you were able to hit low drivens and they would kind of do weird things to the goalkeeper, but just by tapping it. And I don't know if I'm imagining this, but I almost feel like the introduction of an actual low-driven play style has made some of my finesses worse, because I used to almost like tap finesse with, just tap finesse and it would go in. But now it sort of does like a low-driven finesse that are like quite easily more savable. I might have completely imagined that, but I feel like it's sort of...
No, I agree with you. I used to do low-driven finesse quite a bit.
Yeah.
So basically just like a low-power finesse. And I think something... I don't know what it is, but yeah, it just feels like, I guess now, like doing a low driven is more effective than doing that.
Yeah, so, it's like they've classed it as a different type of shot, which has allowed like a new animation or a previous animation to be used for it, which is in the goalkeeper save that wasn't. But no, I like it. I sometimes struggle to get it to trigger, but I think that's a practice thing. And also because I think maybe precision sort of plays into that a little bit as well. But I'm still, finesse inside the box for me. I don't think you can get a much better shooting play style than that. Unless they're moving the keeper, but even then you can mostly just get around them anyway. Yeah, I think it's nice. I prefer it to power shot. I think it can be quite hard to defend, and I think it appears to be hard to defend because of the speed that they can get these shots off. Sometimes when you're going across goal, it would seem like before that the keepers could save the ones that go into the top corner, but the speed of which they hit these shots makes me, I never had a chance to even get there. And also, I'm seeing a lot more of low driven. You can do the shot where it hits the inside of the post and goes straight in. Yeah. And that never really used to happen with just an across goal shot. So I think it's probably opened up more chances, but I'm still taking finesse over it personally.
Yeah, I think finesse plus and regular low driven is quite a good combo actually. And then something to boost your pace seems to work quite well. Right, I think that's where we are going to wrap up. And yeah, Springford, it's been great to have you back on the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a great bit of discussion.
Yeah, as always. And thank you very much as well to Richard Buckley. Are you away on another grand tour this weekend?
I will be, actually, yeah. Flying to Valencia Friday morning for the La Liga finals. So you can catch that on EA Sports FC Pro's social media channels over the weekend.
Nice. Thank you, Richard, for coming on. And thank you very much, as always, to Josh for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's usually a time of the year when gameplay will change quite a bit, as I think people's teams will change. So it'll be interesting to see how it moves.
Yeah. We should say, we talked about this on the content pod, but this week was the last team of the week. And so Team of the Season should be very soon. All of that on next week's main feed podcast. That'll be a content episode. And a reminder that there is a content episode this week as well, which you can check out as a supporter. If you would like to become a supporter, it's just £3 a month and you get double the podcast episodes. Then do check out the Patreon. Just search Support for Weekly. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, a huge thank you for doing so. And a big thank you too to those icon patrons. Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Brent P, Ralph, Josh R, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Bertasaka, Make B, Michael H, Andrew P, Arian B, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Alan G, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Dan W, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.